We're away.
Yeah, looks like we're away. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, we're just chasing a couple of things up at the moment. A little bit late today because the world requires drinking, essentially. We've decided to do Shiraz. So we're going to have a look at a whole bunch of different Shiraz, looking at the classic regions of Australia and what they actually produce. So, as usual, I've got Pat, the novice wine drinker, Dan, the knowledgeable one, and myself, the know-it-all. And we also have a couple of people in the background. We have Michael, our wine rep, who graciously provides some of these wines, and of course our camera expert, Laura. Okay, so just give me 1 second. She's the chief cheese cutter. That's what we like to think of her as. So, just let me quickly tile this in. Okay, things just don't seem to go as you want them to.
Everybody's got a comment on Pat's nice new haircut.
Oh yes. And why did you get that, Laura?
To look handsome.
There you go. It's good to see he's looking handsome. Handsome or handsome? Are you umbopping as well, or?
Not handsome.
Yeah.
Pauline.
I still got hands.
You still have hands. Okay. So, we'll take that disgusting watery thing off the table. We don't need water.
Cool.
It's also available for sale.
Water is also available for sale.
Or Cappy, especially.
Cappy water.
Also brought to you by Aero.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. So today we were just looking at Shiraz and we were asking you guys what you wanted to see, and people said reds particularly. And Shiraz being the biggest selling red wine, we decided that we were going to have a glance at, well, actually it's kind of my favourite red wine as well. So I quite enjoy the good Shiraz. So just to give you a background on it, Shiraz originally came, well, I can't use the word originally. So there's a lot of different discussions of where Shiraz came from. Some people say Shiraz came from the Persian Empire back in pre-BC times, from a place called Shiraz, which was the centre of the Persian Empire at the time, and then translated its way over via Phoenicians to a place called Marseille in the southern area of France, where it made its way north to the Rhone Valley, and developed the name Shiraz. Anecdotal, and we don't know how true it is. In fact, it's probably not true, honestly, because there are no plantings of Shiraz or Syrah in Marseille itself. And for a grape varietal to die out completely is a little bit hard, honestly. So in 1999 they found it was an offspring of two obscure grapes in France, the Shiraz and the Mondeuse Blanc. Shiraz being a thicker skinned red grape, and the Mondeuse Blanc is actually a light white varietal, both of which really tiny plantings, like tiny plantings. So the name Shiraz became popular for the grape varietal in Australia. So essentially in France and pretty much all the old world being France, Germany, Italy, Spain, it was known as Shiraz. So when it came to Australia, we Australianised it. There's a term for it. No, I think it's actually Strinised is actually the term for it. Strinised it. So we stopped calling it. Yeah, Strine. So we stopped calling it Syrah and called it Shiraz.
Shiraz.
Yeah, Shiraz. And the irony is though that it was originally first written as Shiraz, as in SCYACE, and that was the grape varietal it was called previously, which it's just a very weird thing. That's how it was originally termed. Yeah, it was just a really strange thing I discovered. So it became popular in Australian grape varietals. It's been long established. It grows a very dark skin varietal, so dark skin meaning red, essentially. It's also commonly called Hermitage up until the 1980s. So you might remember things like Grange Hermitage.
Yeah.
I think there was a what's the name of that? Horton's had Hermitage, and several other wineries had Hermitage. And Hermitage is
Galloway
Hermitage. That's right.
Galway
Yeah,
Hermitage. Yeah.
that's right. So Hermitage, again, the reason that they called it Hermitage was because the original cuttings and plantings have been brought over from the Rhone Valley, and in the Rhone there's a very famous region called Hermitage. However, that's a French protected designation, so they had to stop doing that pretty brutally, actually. So we're going to use the word Syrah for a little while. Syrah and Shiraz, exactly the same thing. So it's used as a single varietal or as a blend. Several years of strong planting. It is thought to be the 7th most grown grape in the world. Something like 142,000 hectares, but I believe the plantings have been increased over time. It can be found everywhere, particularly all the moderate to warm climates where it grows really well. So you've got the Rhone Valley in France, but you've also got Chile, South Africa, Hawke's Bay, Waiheke, New Zealand as a whole generally, but not to the southern regions. California, Walla Walla, Washington, and then of course Australia with like classic regions, so Barossa, Heathcote, Coonawarra, Hunter Valley, Margaret River and McLaren Vale. So why would you grow that particular grape in Australia? Well, why would you grow it anywhere around the world? And the couple of reasons. One is a business thing. It's very vigorous. It produces a lot. And so as it produces a lot, therefore you can actually harvest, and it's a consistently good harvest. It's got a very short ripening period between veraison, or it begins to physiologically get ripe, and harvesting. So there's a very short window for optimum sort of harvesting. It's mid-ripening, so therefore it's not early in the harvest season, it's not late, it's in the middle area. Really needs careful trellising and training to protect it from the wind, because it is susceptible to wind damage. So when I say wind damage, when the flowers come out and they begin to turn to fruits, if there's high wind, it'll actually stop pollination, so there's no fruit production. It's susceptible to chlorosis and is unsuited to soils with high active lime content. That means basically it's got too high a calcium content in the soil, it won't actually produce as well. But it does need calcium, it does need lime content in the soil to produce a finer, more elegant wine. But we're not looking for a fine and elegant Shiraz, essentially. We're looking for something that's got a bit of guts to it. What else is there? It's very susceptible to mites as well, and botrytis, bunch rot, especially near harvest. Botrytis is not always a good thing. A lot of people talk about the noble rot, botrytis. Botrytis cinerea, which is the noble rot, is actually a disease, and is not what you want in your vineyards. Honestly, it really, really isn't. Because once you have that in your vineyards, it's really hard to get rid of. And if it's not known as botrytis, it's known as grey rot. And when grey rot goes through your vineyards, it's really bad. Okay, so the style and flavour of the wines influenced by the climate. So in moderate climates, such as the Northern Rhone and Walla Walla, Washington places, they tend to produce a medium to full-bodied wine with sort of medium to high levels of tannins and notes of blackberry, mint, and black pepper. Basically, spice is fairly known for its spice, and that's kind of one of the big parts about it. Is Shiraz is always known as a spicy sort of style. In hot climates, which Australia is, and if you think Australia can be a cool climate, you're kind of kidding yourself. In the hot climates, Syrah is more consistently full-bodied, softer tannins, jammier fruits, and more spice notes of licorice, anise, and earthy leather. I find olive tapenade turns up quite a lot in it as well. In fact, it's not unusual for me to go, oh, that's really an olivey sort of style wine, black olives. It produces a wide range of flavour notes depending on the climate and the soils where it's grown. The aroma can range from violets to berries, usually dark as opposed to red, but with chocolate and black pepper. I find a lot of red berry coming out of Barossa, and we'll probably see that today. And I'll find some jammy fruits coming out of McLaren Vale, but generally they're bluer fruits. As I said, we'll go through that then and have a look at it. The best part about it is, over time, the primary notes become supplemented with earthy and savoury flavours. Now we've actually got a range of vintages here. So we're going to be looking at 2017 in the Brockenshack first. We're going to look at Missoni's 2013. We're going to look at Mr. Riggs, which is in 2018. And then we're going to have a look at the DiGiorgio Coonawarra Shiraz of 2016. So we are going to look at not just regions, we're going to look at what aging does to wines as well. So there'll be a few interesting little comments, and we'll talk about primary, secondary and tertiary notes. And just to give you a context around that, primary notes are notes that come from the grape. Secondary notes are influences done by the winemaker, for example, malolactic fermentation, oak regime, etc. And tertiary notes are when it's developed in the bottle and the maturation. So when it's matured, if it's matured for 18 months on oak before it's put in, that's a tertiary note. If it's in bottle for 5 years, that's a tertiary note. And those develop, the primary characteristics generally develop into tertiary characteristics. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the first one. So it's the Brockenshack Zipline 2017. Now I have chosen this first because I wanted to show what I consider a pretty classic classic Barossa Shiraz. This is not from the Barossa Valley floor, this is from Eden Valley, so this is a cooler climate in, it's quite a warm climate in Barossa. And
When you opened that, when
Yeah.
you cracked that, did you hear it go?
oh yeah, so what actually happened is it was sealed. When you cracked the bottle, it had the white seal, a little plastic cap on top. And when I popped that off, it just gave a little pop. That is actually carbon dioxide. During the process, fermentation creates carbon dioxide. Generally, during the aging process, it'll fall out or come out of it. But it'll sometimes have some carbon dioxide go back into the wine. If there is just a little bit, when you pop it, because they sparge it slightly before it goes in the bottle, it should have a bit of pressure to it to prevent air from getting in. And therefore it can pop. If you get that fizzy, frizzante, sparkling sort of effect in it, that means there's too much carbon dioxide been used in the wine. And they might even use a bit of bubbling through that to age the wine prematurely. But that's been caught up by the wine and tied to the wine, and as it ages, it'll be released and becomes that little frizzy.
Yeah, but it
It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It can do only in the case of an unfiltered, unfined, naturally made wine, where you pop it and it's fizzy because it's actually fermenting still, or it's re-fermented and more CO2 is produced. But yeah, they sparge a little bit, so you will get a little bit of a pop in that. You shouldn't have any major issues though for just a little pop. So we'll just run through the wine quickly. So Barossa region. Oh yeah. Barossa Wine Valley is one of the oldest and most premier wine regions. It's in South Australia. It's about 56 kilometres northeast of Adelaide, and it's unlike most of the Australian wine industry, it was heavily influenced by the British. This was heavily influenced by the German settlers, particularly Prussian province of Silesia. In general, it has a continental climate, but a series of transverse valleys and sloping hills produce a wide range of microclimates. I find it more Mediterranean climate in style, because continental generally means really high diurnal day temperatures, really cold night temperatures, and a big difference in like winter to summer. Mediterranean is a lot more what's the word for it? Consistent. So there's not as big a range, and I find that out of the regions in Australia, that one's probably more Mediterranean than it is. I've actually had it called maritime. I don't think it's maritime.
Well, Eden Valley.
Yeah. Oh no, just Barossa generally.
Right.
I don't find it continental to that extreme. Like I do find it more of a Mediterranean style climate. I'm happy to prove wrong, and probably will be. So the valley floor is where you get the warmest from. So when we talk about Barossa Valley floor, there's basically three areas of Barossa. You've got Barossa Valley floor, Eden Valley, and High Eden Valley. Eden Valley is about 460 metres above sea level. Barossa Valley floor is not that much above sea level, and High Eden is, I think, only about 480 metres. So it's 20 metres difference. That being said, though, pretty much all your premier wines that come out of Barossa, that looking for sort of that darker fruit generally come from Eden Valley. On the Barossa Valley floor, you get a lot more red ripe berry fruits, red ripe fruits, and it generally produces a higher alcohol wine as well. That's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing. So this one's from Brockenshack. Anyone that knows us knows we sell a lot of Brockenshack, and one of the reasons is because he owns us. However, that being said, though, the winemaking is exceptionally good, and the vineyards that he has on Pub Road in Eden Valley used to go into, I think, particularly Octavius, was Yolanda's Octavius, and really he's done a brilliant job with the vineyards up there, getting them retrellised, replanted. He's done a lot of work. He's got a solid door up there. If you're ever interested in going, just give us a call and we can probably hook you up. So I'm getting quite a purple hue out of that. The nose. Getting quite a pronounced nose, quite forward fruit. Pat, what are you getting first up?
Definitely dark fruits, like plum, blackberry. A little bit of pepper, but not like too much. Yeah.
I'm getting sort of black cherries.
Yeah, I can see black cherry. Yeah.
And for me, I've always found that Eden Valley always has a sort of a dark chocolate to the back of it. That's one of the giveaways for me is dark chocolate. For it. No, I don't know whether.
Exactly what was going through my head.
Yeah.
Pepper, spice, and chocolate.
Barossa Valley floor generally is more of a mocha character, so that coffee chocolate sort of character. But I always find Eden Valley always has a dark chocolate. McLaren Vale, when we get to it, we'll have a look at that. I always find that's a bitter chocolate. That's 70% cocoa style.
I'm stuffing a little glass envy here, man.
Hang on, I gave it a big glass. Where'd it go?
I gave it to Michael.
Oh, you passed it on. I'm used to happy with it.
Theirs is even bigger though than that.
Soft, gentle tannins. Not
Yeah,
breaking at all, really.
That's the part I really like, is that it's round, smooth, rich. It's just lovely. And I really do find the tannins now to be just gorgeous.
This is like this is our nice one that we have on pour at the bar, and even though the house one we have is Three Brothers, people always usually will pay the extra for this, and they're very happy with the price.
Yeah, no, it's always really lovely. We will be running a competition today, so keep an eye out. I promise we'll be running a competition. There'll be a bottle of wine on offer. It'll be the winner. We'll choose a wine today which we think was the best of them, and that'll be the wine that we'll actually do the prize for. So it will be asked later on, but not right now. So for me that is the typical classic Barossa. I find it to be a good benchmark to start Shiraz at. So we all have an idea now of what we're looking at for Shiraz. I'll ask Laura what she thinks of it. Does it look pretty?
It does. I kind of want some.
You don't want it to treat up or something?
I do kind of.
Get a small glass. It doesn't actually matter what size glass you get because you can fill it with
I'll pour one.
It's got the tiny one.
Champagne.
Last week Laura had a bit of a struggle to try and get through the wines that we had.
I'm a lightweight. He's being nice about it. How am I going to get
Okay.
that? Oh, thank you.
Not this one.
So, if you've got any comments, feel free to type them in. We actually are reading on the side here, so if you've got anything you wanted to say, feel free. Any questions as well, feel free to ask. I always find it to be interesting to see what other people are wanting to know.
I thought I'd wear these today to make me sound smarter.
Yeah, wait a
It also helps you see shit.
It does, yeah. Who'd have thought? No. Oh my god, I like that. It's just gone weird. Okay, so from here let's go to. So we'll drink some more. Actually, we'll drink some more. Let's say, how was your day today anyway, Dan?
I achieved absolutely nothing. It was great.
Oh, don't you love that?
Yeah.
A day where you can just go, no,
Got on the computer, on the Google,
on the Google.
and
Oh, you can tell them we're over 40, can't you?
Surfing the net.
looking for motorcycle parts, but it takes hours looking and finding and searching.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we'll go on to Missoni. This is a 2013 Missoni Estate Shiraz. Not the El Nino, this is the Estate Shiraz. Although I have to say, I thoroughly enjoy the El Nino too. I think it's really good.
Selection of munchies here today.
Yes. So what do we have munchie-wise? I believe we have some Mullaney cheese. We've got the Mullaney cheese, the Tuscan, and
Port,
the port. Oh yeah.
cheddar, salami, mild salami,
The mushrooms. I was
Butter
aiming for the
mushrooms.
smoked mushrooms, and
Yeah.
normally have them in the deli at IGA.
they're in
They
a
don't have them
balsamic,
anymore. Yeah, balsamic mushroom.
The balsamic mushrooms. Oh, okay.
and soft goat cheese.
Oh yeah. Now we love
That's
goat's cheese.
So good.
We serve goats in the bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
They serve
There you go, sir. Would you like on that?
Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, just quickly. So I'm just going to ask Michael. Am I correct in saying this is from Glencara
Yeah.
in Victoria? Right.
Yeah. Landsborough.
Yes, I was going to say I'll
Yeah.
read that on this one. So Glencara. This is from Missoni Wines. They have vineyards in Mornington Peninsula, generally for their Pinots and for their Chardonnays. And they have at Glencara, which is the base of the Pyrenees in Victoria. The nearest town is a place called Landsborough. Oh, the irony.
Classy.
Yeah. Average elevation about 340 metres. It's renowned for producing some of Australia's most iconic wines. I'm trying to think. Glencara Estate's anyone I can think of for that.
Oh, for the area.
Yeah, what's the area?
Teltani's in the area.
Oh, Teltani, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
And it'll come to me. Another
It's not best, that's Graham's. It's
there's a guy called David Jones. He's got a brand. I forget what it is.
Andrew Peace.
No. I'll have a look.
Yeah. Anyway, so its predominant grape varieties are Shiraz, Cabernet, and Merlot. So the three major French varietals. There you go. So he's got about 700 hectares, which 200 hectares have been planted with vines. Surrounded by state forest, and 200 hectares have been retained as native vegetation. It's not exactly the highest rainfall, 550 millimetres.
No, they don't get much.
So they
rain.
kind of require a bit of irrigation,
Yeah.
December to February. The soil structure is shale rock over deep red clay. By the way, red clay is exceptionally good for Shiraz. Just thought I'd let you know that one. Good water retention. Shiraz likes a bit of water retention, but also just when Shiraz roots go down and starts drawing from minerality, you'll find some absolutely gorgeous sort of mineral notes turn up in the wines. So always looking for something like ironstone or some heavy igneous rock is always good underneath. Limestone's good, but it suffers from chlorosis when it gets it. So longer ripening period is the main factor which attributes to the wine's superb colour and structure. Now, if you were going to say to me, can I have a Victorian Shiraz? That generally means I don't want quite as fruit forward. I'd like something with a bit more spice, something with a bit more elegance to it, and that's kind of what Victoria as a whole does. And I'm removing Heathcote out of that because Heathcote is a particularly warm area inside that, which makes some really great Shiraz. Heathcote Estate is a very well-known one as well. And Heathcote Winery, they're very synonymous with their names, I guess. But, so Missoni, when I was presented this one, there were basically a couple of wines. Mount Langy's Giran was one that I'd seen previously. Was that the one that we were talking about? Is that Mount Langy around Pyrenees?
Yeah, Mount Langy's.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So Mount Langy Giran.
There's another one that I'm thinking about as well. Yeah.
So Mount Langy Giran, for me, was always a favourite wine because it didn't look like your general general Victorian Shiraz. It actually looked a lot more Barossa-like. And when I got given this one to try, I found that the fruits in this were quite good. Yes.
This one used to go into Mount Langy Green.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they've got a big vineyard planting, 700 acres.
Yep.
And before the drought, they grew for Mount Langy, South Court, Brown Brothers, and some others. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
But the Patricia label used to be up to 60% Masoni Shiraz in there.
Oh, okay,
Brown
right,
Brothers
yeah.
Patricia.
So what I found is when I got given this one to try, and I think it was in 08 was the first one I sort of looked at, I saw the full forward fruits, but bright red fruits. I found it had a beautiful vanillins from the really well used oak. And because when I was looking at it, it was quite a few years old at this point, I looked at the tertiary notes, and the tertiary notes hadn't turned into ported or sherried notes. It looked fresh, vibrant, it looked full forward fruit, it had a lovely fleshy palate, it had a little bit of spice to it, generally sort of that white pepper spectrum, but now I'm looking at it, in the latest vintage, it's more of a sort of a star anise cinnamon sort of package to me.
Bit of minty there.
Yeah, a bit of mintiness to it. But this, like a 2013, so it's 7 years old.
Getting better as you swirl it around. Get a bit of air into it.
Bit of air into that, and it is gorgeous.
I lost that. I don't know how to try that.
So Dan has now lost our page. That's
Gal
good.
Winnie is the other.
Paul
one
Clark
out
said I'm living dangerously wearing a white shirt. So tasty. It was actually an experiment to see if I could get through it.
Ah, piss heads club.
Live.
Some of my favourite piss heads.
That's how we're coming in to sort of say hello.
I mean to say hello. That
Yes.
just slipped out.
Yes.
Yeah. That looks good.
Yeah, it is.
Make
It's
it
lovely.
specialised.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of
Had some of
licorice
that
on
one.
the nose.
That's
Yeah.
very nice. And that one. Good. Those two are good.
Well, trust me, they're all really good for me.
So there's a few comments there, but
Oh,
every
is the
time I
famous
touch it,
is the
it's
famous winery nearby? Nearby to what? Go on, Clarky. Nearby to what?
Lansbury.
Landfrom. Yeah, actually, it could be. Beerwah.
Oh no. I think
So yes. So Pat, what's your take on that, mate?
Yeah, I was a little bit taken back by it. I was expecting a bit more, but it's really bright, like, still pretty soft, like tannins and like bright redder fruits.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't quite taste what the last bit is.
Okay, this has got a bit of age to it, so you get a bit of leatheriness. You have little hints of tobacco, but only little hints of tobacco. That cedariness coming in there as well. The oak regime that they've used in this is really, really good. Like, it's got some of the oak character in the secondary stuff, in the secondary areas, but it's more about the, for me, it's getting that slightly earthy quality, but much more towards leathers, which you'll see. As it gets aged, as it would age, you'll get more of that leathery character. You might even get a bit of like cigar box turn up in there as well. Generally, cigar box turns up more in Cabernet, but I find this one's just lovely. Ben?
Yeah, I got a touch of licorice on the nose actually.
Yeah, that star anise licorice. Yeah.
And on the finish, I get that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like the dark chocolate lingering.
Chocolate there.
A licorice lingering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I have to say,
Nice tannin. It's really just coats your mouth almost. It's not too dry. I think very enjoyable.
ah yes,
What year was
no,
it?
Clarky was right. Yes, it is Mount Langley. We got there in the end. It just took a while for us to get there. Sorry, you were saying? Was that?
It was 12, was it? The year?
Yeah,
2013.
13. I have one very dedicated customer to this one.
Yeah.
Good.
What did we have originally that we ran out of?
2.8.
Last
Oh,
year?
8.
Yeah.
08. Yeah, he was buying it
Right.
and having a little whinge at us actually when we kept telling people how good it was and other people started buying it.
Because the 2002 was pretty good. That was the vintage before. No, we had 205. 2002 was under cork.
Oh,
That was awesome too. Yeah.
cool. So I was going to say, for me, I think that's a stunningly good Shiraz. I mean, you know, we're selling it for between $20 to $25. I'll put
With
that up
that much
against,
age on it.
yeah, I'll put that up against pretty much anything else that's coming out there.
Pretty much anything Masoni does is going to be good. Like,
Generally,
yeah.
except when they stuff their Sangiovese up, but then they declassify that into the El Nino Sangiovese.
Yeah, I don't think they stuffed it up. It just didn't come out Didn't grow well.
Didn't grow well.
Well,
The flocculent's turning up in that one.
no, there's a chemical problem with the Sangiovese grape.
Oh, okay.
It's not got to do with the winemaking or anything. It's just there's a chemical problem with the grape, and sometimes it precipitates a sludge after a few years in the bottle.
Okay.
It's inexplicable.
Inexplicable. Cool. You're buzzing. So now we're going to go to another iconic region of Australia, which is McLaren Vale. Now we did a dinner with Riggsy a little while back, and if you ever get to meet the man, he's a giant of a human being. Two things that he demands that you do: one, shake his hand, and two, look him in the eyes as you do so. He's very particular about that. Great, really great storyteller, really lovely guy. And honestly, wine credentials are second to none. He, a great winemaker, helps out a lot of other guys in this region, and has had his hand in quite a few different wineries over the years. What's the major? I think he did a lot of winemaking for. He was like a contract winemaker for a lot of wineries in the McLaren Vale. And I find his stuff always really well made. So this is his Gaffer 2018, and if you're wondering why it's got a pink cap and a pink label, it's because every year he actually donates money from the sale of the Gaffer to the, I think it's the Breast Cancer Foundation.
Yes.
And he's raised a lot of money for them over the time.
$155,000.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
I think that's what I read on the
Yeah,
interweb.
on the interwebs it's 155,000,
Yeah.
but I personally think it's probably a
I
fair
don't know
bit
what
more.
date that is actually.
But we'll talk about McLaren Vale as a region quickly. So it's northwest of the Fleurieu Peninsula. It's located approximately 35 k's south of Adelaide, and it's probably one of the most important wine-producing regions zones in the Fleurieu zone. Regarded highly throughout Australia and the world, has a wide variety of grape varietals that have been grown here, and in fact has a lot of alternate varietals growing there. I've got a couple of friends that are winemakers down there growing some stunningly good Sangiovese and some brilliant Tempranillo.
Flinders Foundation.
That's a Flinders Foundation, yep.
Towards breast cancer.
I always think it should say towards fighting breast cancer, because whenever they say towards breast cancer, I'm like, which side are you on? A wide variety. So the best wines come from very old vines, some planted more than 100 years ago. So they're talking about D'Arenberg's Dead Arm and things like that. I don't know. There's a bit of an argument about old vines, and if you want to ask any questions or bring up any points, feel free, because when you start looking at the life of a vine, the early part of the vine, the first 3 years, essentially it produces vigorously, but doesn't produce great wine grapes. After about 2 or 3 years, it begins to grow consistently good and starts producing some great fruit. It's still fairly young and vigorous, so you're still getting a lot of grapes off it, and they're pretty well produced. About 9 years seems to be the big sort of perfect point that vines produce a really good amount with a really good intensity and a really good fruit. After that, the older that it gets, the less it produces, but supposedly the better the bunches are going to be. The more, so less bunches, there's going to be more sugars, more work put into those bunches to produce good fruit. Problem is though, that in the world of business and the world that we've got, we can make some great wines out of several different, out of some ordinary grapes. You can make some pretty good wine out of that. Do older vines produce better wine? Because you're going to have a lot less of it. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be harder, and you're going to have to be more careful with the delicate handling of the vines. The question that has been asked is it really worth it? Like big producers will let the vines get to about 10, 12 years, and then they'll actually graft new vines onto it and produce again, because they're producing high volume, but it's usually pretty good quality. So, the 100-year-old vines, is it sort of we're getting so many less bunches. It costs us so much more to have the vines. Is it worthwhile?
Well, how old are the vines on Brockencheck? Zipline.
I'm not sure actually. I think they're only about 40 years old, aren't they?
Aren't they 86 years old or something?
Well, so it's 1876, isn't it? The
Riesling's old.
Riesling's
Well,
the oldest
The
one.
Shiraz was pretty old too.
wasn't it? Okay.
Oh
I'm
no,
unsure.
shouldn't say that.
You should really know that because you are the guy.
You should know too.
I should know that, but
Don't let Trevor
Can
see
we
you.
phone a friend?
phone a friend. Darren, where are you, Darren?
I reckon he's with his 80-year-old mum's birthday today.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday. Yeah. That's for his mum, is it?
Mrs. Naylor.
Mrs. Naylor. Happy birthday, Mrs. Naylor. We hope you have a nice drink, or at least as nice a drink as we're having.
I'll find out. I'll look this.
Yeah, so, but I mean, his vines, his old stuff is generally going into his William Frederick and his Jack Harrison, so they're not going into this. He might declassify a couple of barrels, but that's about it. So when you look at that, are old vines, apart from the historical significance?
Jack Harrison's a pretty nice one.
Yeah, but I also was a couple of winemakers that I was talking to said that the best producing or the best wines that they find are always sort of on that top of the escarpment where it's actually the top of the ridge line. That's where the best vines seem to turn up, or the best grapes, I should say, seem to turn up. And in fact, I think his Jack Harrison is, I think it's a 5-row, he's a side on top of his escarpment that he used, they used for that. And Sean was telling me that anyway. That's Sean Koleski of Laughing Jack Wines. He's always said that's been the key point for him. So yeah, again, viticulturally, it's an interesting question. So yeah. So anyway, so we'll go back to McLaren Velo. Let's go back to McLaren Velo. So Pat, what do you reckon of this one?
I love it. It's it's really well balanced. Really fruit forward.
Yep.
But trying to decipher what the fruits are. There's a bit more red fruit, I think, than the Brockenchack. A little bit of spice, but it's not over the top. I love it.
I'm beautiful, vibrant colour, but it's 2018, so it should be a vibrant colour.
Quite dark.
Yeah, it's still got some lovely depth of colour to it. Briggsy always seems to do good depth of colour in his wine. For me, more blue fruits. So that sort of blueberry style fruits, or mulberries even, you can get those in there. But the back palate's that bit of chocolate, that's 70% cocoa. That's what I'm picking up. And in a blind tasting, I've done several of them now where I've been lined up against a whole bunch of different wines, and I can guess. That's how I guess. Is actually I go from what's the back palate showing. If I know it's Shiraz, it's much easier for me to understand. In a blind, some of the blind tastings we've had, oh my god. So when I was doing my exams and they said, here are 12 wines, tell us what they are and where they're from, that's a massive, terrifying thing to happen. That being said though, once you actually start breaking it down, it gets a lot easier. Okay, so lots of European regions average their vine age between 40 to 50 years to get a balance of young intensity concentration with old wines and the vigour and commercial part of the young ones. Yeah, that's fairly true. You need to have a balance. You need to have, it depends on your business model. Your business model is, my old vines are going into my premier wines, that's why I'm charging so much for them. If your younger wines are your major production, and that's your estate range and you're selling that, then declassifying some of the old vines that I can completely understand. It all depends. I really want to spend more time viticulturally in a vineyard and trying the grapes that come off those older vines in comparison to younger vines, because the vigorousness of how much production there is in comparison to the quality of production, it's always an intriguing sort of question, because I've had, dead arm is literally, and the reason it's called the Arenberg dead arm is the vines themselves, when vines grow, they have two major trellising lines, two major arms, and one of those arms dies from a particular disease called dead arm and leaves only one left. So therefore, the plant's not trying to produce anything on this, it'll only produce it on this. So therefore, that is that a beneficial disease or not? Well, generally it's thought of not. But it's one of those things you just have to check on. But for me, blue fruits. Dan, what are you getting?
The fruit would be about right. It's very typical that McLaren Vale, that juvie sort of nose,
Yep.
which I love about McLaren Vale.
Yeah, people have a tendency to be a bit nasty towards McLaren Vale Shiraz, particularly in the on-premise or the restaurants and that. They have a tendency to go, it's too jammy, too extracted, too blousy. And that's because a lot of the times they're trying to match it with food, particularly European style foods, that they've created in the restaurant. I think every region expresses what it does really well, and if a region does something particularly well, I really think that they should express those characters. I mean, if Barossa does a big Barossa Shiraz really well, then why change it? If you're buying a Barossa Shiraz, you're buying a Barossa Shiraz. However, I do find that my personal palate is different from a lot of other people's palates. I love wine from everywhere, and let's face it, I can drink pretty much anything. But if I drink a Cote de Rome Shiraz, then I'll go, I expect to see this. If I suddenly get a Barossan style coming out of Cote de Rome, I'll be going, well, that seems very strange and very odd.
It's not why I bought it.
Yeah, it's not why I bought it, that's not what I've been sold. And this is the same for Barossa. And Barossa's undergone a bit of a change. And McLaren Vale has been a big driver of that change that's happening in Barossa. So people love McLaren Vale wines because they're fruit forward, they're powerful, usually higher in alcohol, and the depth of flavour is usually there. So the jammy, so maybe they'll be a bit more jammy, or maybe they'll be a bit more extracted. But I've found that some people have shied away from that. In Barossa, they've changed a lot of their winemaking style, pulling it back to make it a bit more easier drinking and not the big, ballsy, blousy Barossa Shiraz we've seen over the years. And yet, when you go to the upper end, that's what you're buying. You're not buying the lighter style, you're buying the bigger and blousier style. It's an intriguing thing for me. As a retailer, I need to know and understand why people are looking to buy those wines, which is why I'm telling this now, because the tax department then can look at my wine purchases and then understand why I write them off every year.
I'll try everything.
Yeah, I've got to try everything. We have 735 different wines in the shop, so there's 735 different wines I'll be claiming every year.
Let's work that out. $20
This cheese is a bit overpowering for it.
The Tuscan.
Yeah, I had the Tuscan. It actually almost wipes out the wine flavour. Well, I had it before it. I think the whiter cheese would probably go along better.
Yeah, the port one is much better for it, and the goat cheese is exceptionally good for it.
That's why I couldn't say much about the taste, because after the piece of cheese I couldn't taste anything.
Now, we're going to talk about another region now. This is another classic region. It's classic region for Cabernet. I personally find it to be a great region for Shiraz, and one of the reasons is because it was originally planted as Shiraz. So, the first wines were planted by John Riddick in 1890, and only the Redmond family of the Rouge I can get that right. I don't know why I thought that. I immediately thought Rogue One, but anyway. So Rouge, these are not the ones that look good. Continued to produce table wine during this period, which was Shiraz as the main grape varietal. So it's most famous for its red earth or Terra Rosa soil, which is really limited to a certain area inside of Coonawarra. A lot of people buy Coonawarra wines assuming the whole thing is that Terra Rosa, but really there's only that cigar, and the guys who are on that cigar have, I think, probably the most right to say that they're Coonawarra, but unfortunately the delineation of Coonawarra is that entire area. So, it would be really good if there was a way to subset that into maybe saying that it's Terra Rosa Coonawarra, but anyway, that's a side point. Like all the terroir, Terra Rosa interacts with the region's maritime climate. Now, this is actually really cool because it's only 60 metres above sea level. Coonawarra is actually quite warm. You know, that open area, very flat, very open. Not a lot of ranging.
Cody needs a hand. I just heard a lady say you know much about wine. So.
Seems okay.
One of the really cool parts about it is that there's a really cool phenomenon called the Bonnie upwelling, and it is actually an Arctic current. So really hot area, and therefore it needs to temper it somehow. You need something to temper that hot climate. There is an Arctic current that comes along under the coast of Australia and comes up called the Bonnie upwelling, and that actually brings a lovely cooling breeze, particularly in the afternoon.
Wow.
So that's how they manage to get a good variation on their wine. So they're able to get that. You know, it's not consistently hot and over extracted all the time. They actually get that cooling influence coming in. They're generally located around Penola, so it's about 80 kilometres from the Southern Ocean. Bonnie upwelling, dark blue water stream on the coast near Coonawarra comes up from the Antarctic, resulting in cooler temperatures. Long but cool hours of sunshine during the ripening period allow the intense flavour and retain good acid. And that's the other part that we really need to talk about, acidity. So when we talk about Shiraz, we've talked about forward fruit, we've talked about tannin, we've talked about the alcohol level. If you have all of that but don't have acidity to balance it off, you're going to have a really unbalanced, jammy, syrupy wine that it is actually quite unpleasant to drink after a while. And I have had several wines, one out of Heathcote, a couple out of Barossa, one from Margaret River, that have never had the acidity. For some reason they've left it hanging in the vines too long, or it lacks the acidity to balance it off. And you drink one glass and you go, how pronounced and how really good is the second glass is like, I'm done. I really can't drink anymore. And it's the acidity in these wines that actually make it drinkable. It makes it pleasant. It makes it something you want to go back for a second glass of. And that
Helps for aging.
it certainly does. It's part of the protective nature of aging as well. Actually, what the good part about Shiraz is when it comes to the aging potential of these wines, they all will age really, really well. Just, they all have fairly high alcohols. So 14 and a half,
I haven't been passing it over to you.
15.
Did you have the other one?
That ain't
And-
quite nice on this one.
That's okay, man. Only a tiny little
And
bit.
this one
That's
is
cute.
14 and a half.
So this is actually the lowest.
What's the
13.9.
price
30.9.
point for looking?
So that one's 20 to 25, 20 to 25, 20 to 25.
Oh, okay, so it all.
So they're all in the same,
same range.
Yeah,
This
we are
one's a bit
looking at
dearer.
apples and apples.
Okay, cool.
This one is a little bit more expensive. It's about 25 to 30. And the reason that is I was trying to find a Coonawarra that I sell regularly that expresses the Terra Rosa soil and the style that's made in Coonawarra. If I'd had a catnip lying around, I would have probably thrown that in, but this is one I go with. And actually, there's not a huge amount of, there's a lot of Shiraz grown in Coonawarra, and there's a lot of Shiraz put out from Coonawarra, but they're more renowned for Cabernet. So they kind of pigeonholed a little bit. Now,
Just get back to that zip line. Average age is 50 years.
so it is 50 years. I thought it was 40
Average
years.
age, yeah.
I thought it was 40 years. But yes, so now, Coonawarra, a little bit cooler because of that upwelling, the Bonnie upwelling. You'll find that I actually always seem to find a touch of mint in there as well, and I don't know whether it could be just my mind going, yeah, there's a touch of mint in there because it's Coonawarra, and that's what I'm so used to in Coonawarra, but it could also be, it might be there. Suggestion is not a difficult thing to happen. The number of times that we've actually been doing a wine tasting and I've turned around and gone, such and such is there, everyone at the table goes, oh, I see that now. Whether I'm right or wrong, I've actually had people disagree with me, which is great, because I do prefer people to go, oh, I don't see that.
Are you wrong?
Yeah, not so much are you wrong, but I don't see that, or what is it that how are you seeing it, what is it that prompts that? And that's really important because we all have different, whilst we don't have different tastes, we have different ways of identifying flavour. And the way we identify flavour in the brain is that we have an associative flavour. So we associate A with B. So therefore, if I said the word green apples, you all think of Granny Smith apple, and the flavours that Granny Smith apple have. If I said strawberry, well, strawberry, you'll think of strawberry. If I said the word yuzu, you go, what? Japanese people think of that limey sort of flavours that come into there. Umeshi is like a plum. So, but it's the flavours that we associate with. If I say, if you've grown up and you've never eaten fruit, and one particular fruit. So I was going through New Zealand, and every single winery I went to was, oh, that's very gooseberry.
I've never had a gooseberry.
I've never had a gooseberry. I had to go and find a gooseberry to eat one just to see what it was like. And yet for about 2 years I've been saying, oh yeah, it's really gooseberry flavour. Because it was a flavour I couldn't identify, when I read it was gooseberry, I assumed that flavour was the unidentifiable flavour. And I found it really funny that when I did try it, I went, no, it's nothing like what I thought it was.
That's not gooseberry. That's not gooseberry. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because
So
you're doing it in reverse.
Yeah.
You're doing it for what you think it tastes like in the wine to the
To what
fruit
it is,
rather than
yeah.
the other. Yeah.
So I always find that was a really interesting little way of doing it. And in fact, if you ever do write wine notes, or you ever do journalism, and there's a lot of guys out there, like, there's people who are not wine professionals who are doing a lot of
Cut and pasting.
well, no, not so much cut and paste. They're actually identifying wines, and they might have a great palate, but they're writing it for the palate they've developed. It's not the same lexicon that people in the industry have. And in fact, it's quite funny when you actually have people inside the industry reading essentially a good amateur's note. They'll actually look at it and go, oh, they're kidding themselves. But really, when you think about it, they're not. They're actually probably being more to what the public are looking for than the guys who have spent the time learning about that lexicon and actually seeing what the flavours are. So, Coonawarra. Sorry, we'll get back into Coonawarra now. It's very important.
Really
So,
deep colour.
yeah, deep colour, like massively deep colour on that. Still for 2016, it's showing a lot of vibrant fruit. I am getting some darker fruits on that one. It's kind of, it's not blackberry or cassis or anything like that. It's more of black plums,
I
like
have
cherries.
plums.
Yeah, when you bite into a plum, it's got that deep red colour inside instead of
Yeah.
the white
The
peach.
big
sort of
juicy
colour.
dark
Yeah.
plum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a lot more of that, and it is quite juicy actually. It's really lovely. The tannin is superb. It's rich. It's rounded. It's not searing and quite tight. The oak use on that is really lovely. You've got a lovely, vanilla and cedar notes running into it. I find the finishing of it, it's not the chocolatey sort of finish that I was expecting. I was looking for some sort of chocolate. I don't find that. I see more of that licorice star anise and black spice. Black spice is my big thing on that one. So yeah, Pat, what do you reckon? What are you going for?
Yeah, I don't see the black spice. I find the tannins a bit bit more prominent than some of the other ones.
Yep.
I don't know whether it's because I found out about the alcohol content, but it tastes less kind of alcoholic, a lot smoother. But then it's still pretty bold with the tannins compared to what I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, I find balance is really important because if you've got a high alcohol, you need high fruit,
Yeah.
and you need high acid, and you need good tannins.
This one isn't as fruit forward as I was expecting.
No.
So yeah, it balances quite well with the lower alcohol. But yeah, still to me the tannins seem a bit more than what I was expecting.
Okay.
The colour gets me for a start. It's so dark, so rich. The nose I actually got, I hate to put the vegans off, but I actually got a little bit of meatiness on the nose. It's still got that big bold, plummy sort of fruit, but yeah, a little bit of meatiness. The first couple of sips of it actually made my mouth water, so that's acid, I guess, is it?
Acidity and tannin, yeah.
Acidity and tannin.
I go acidity more than anything
The
else.
last couple I've had, but it's more pronouncing the tannins. It's not as watery anymore. It's clingy. It sticks to your whole mouth, your whole palate.
Yeah.
Overall, lovely. Love it.
Yeah, it's a good little one. So, let's, no, it's all good. Let's have a quick adjudication around the table. So, you've got $30. You can buy one bottle. What do you buy, Pat?
It's really hard to say. It would have to be depending on what kind of meal I'm making, but I think I'd probably go with it'd be either the Masoni or the Brocken Shack for me.
Okay, well, pick one.
I'll go Brocken Shack.
Rock and Shack?
Yeah.
He knows where his payment's coming
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Dan?
For my money, if it's for one bottle, Masoni for me. That sort of counts in with the age.
Yeah.
It always
So-
looks good if you've got a wine on the table with the
Yeah.
age on it.
And if I was going to buy one to impress friends at a table, I'd probably go Masoni as well, only because of the age component. If I was buying one for an everyday drink, it would either be Mr. Riggs or the Brocken Shack. But yeah, I have to say that Masoni, 2013, good age, great flavours, phenomenal wine.
How much of the 2013 do we have left? Or do we
How
have
much is left? Very little.
A bit.
A bit. Oh,
A bit.
There's enough to get through.
There'll be another couple of months worth.
Oh, okay, rightio.
Yeah.
So it's only on for a couple more months. So yeah.
What's next finish?
What's next week?
15.
15.
They skipped 14 completely.
Yes.
There's a big
It's
grin on his
going with
face.
that,
Yes, 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 yes.
It's not skipped, it's hiding.
He's hiding something, yes.
No, it's been sold.
Oh, it's been sold. Okay,
Yeah.
rightio. Look, I do realise I'm being paid by Brocken Shack, but I still have to say that 2013 is that's a stunning. And the reason I find it stunning is because it is so different from a lot of other Victorian Shiraz. There are some phenomenal Victorian Shiraz out there. You've got Best's, who is one of my favourite Victorian wineries. Their bin one for a $27 bottle is brilliant, and it's a great food wine. For their bin zero, which is their second highest rated Shiraz, is stunning. But the thing is, I like it because it is expressive and very typical of what Victoria does. The Heathcote slaughter.
Best is Grampians, right?
Yeah, Gramps.
Yeah.
Slaughter block from Slaughterhouse. I think it's Slaughterhouse.
Yeah, sounds right.
From Heathcote is one of my favourite wines from Victoria as well. When it comes to those Shiraz, I really like those. But, 2013, you don't find too many 2013s under $50. So,
No, and you've got 2013 El Nino as well.
yes, that's right. We
I haven't
do.
tried that for a long time.
Well,
Maybe we should.
Should we try it?
Yeah, why not? We're terribly sorry for all you people out there, but we do this thing after we've had a few drinks. We'll grab another bottle of wine to have a look at. So we're going to have a look at the El Nino 2013 now.
in the Shiraz as
And
well.
the Shiraz, yeah.
That's a great wine as well, the
Yeah.
Almenas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sort of 14 to 15 bucks a bottle, or 2 for 25 some days. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one is going to 214 pretty soon.
214 very shortly.
Very shortly.
Pop, pop, little pop.
Little pop. That's put yourself some.
Why not?
So have you heard anything about what's happening with on-premise these days at the moment? Like, is there a lot of on-premise reopening, or?
Not really.
No.
No. A few people doing a little bit because there's a limitation of 10 people.
Yeah.
You can get multiple sittings. It's good for a small operation, but not so much for larger ones.
That's really bright red fruit, and this is what I was talking about with the jamminess. So as wine ages in the bottle, you can have some fruit development, and fruit development, what that means is it can become jammy, and this is what I'm talking about with jamminess. You can see that pectin sort of flavours that come in there, they're quite intense. It's a beautiful wine just to drink by itself. Slightly out of balance.
Is it out of the same vineyards? Is it out of the same area, or
Yeah. Just the good stuff goes into.
just the best stuff goes into the
Yeah.
Masoni? This is its little brother.
Yeah, so when they're making the wine, what they'll do is they'll actually barrel, they'll pick in usually 2-ton lots, they'll ferment separately, put it into barrel, and then those usually they've got a fairly good idea which areas of the vineyards do the best. They'll take those grapes, those premium grapes, make the wine, and then put it in the barrel, and then they'll actually test the barrels over time. They'll walk the barrels and take a sample, try it, and they'll rate it A, A++, B, C, D, and that's remember we did the blending class,
Yeah.
and you might have a whole bunch of C rated juice, and then some B rated juice and A rated juice, and they'll actually then work a blend to produce their premium stuff, and generally the premium stuff is going to be their premium barrels blended together.
You've got to balance it out with how much you're going to get for your premium bottles and how many you can actually sell while still bringing in the cash with your cheaper range that you can pump through them.
Yeah. And that's a really important thing to understand. Wine is not just an artisanal thing; it's a business as well.
Yeah. And the good stuff gets longer in barrel.
Yeah.
Probably newer barrels.
Yep. This one I probably has. I'm going to guess, and I don't know. It's going to have less oak to it.
Yeah, less
It'll
time
be
in oak
older
and
oak.
probably older oak as well.
So Shiraz works really well, oaked or unoaked. If you've ever had St. Hallett's Gamekeeper's range, that's all unoaked. And the thing is, though, that's a beautiful, expressive, juicy wine that you go, oh, that's really lovely. It doesn't have any of the vanillins or the cedar notes or anything like that. But it still is a really good drinkable wine. Won't age particularly well. It will become that fruit development, and it will get that juicy jamminess to it.
It's stood up pretty well age-wise.
Oh, age-wise, it's done brilliant. Considering that the oak on that is nowhere near as much. The alcohol is probably the main protectorate for it. What is the alcohol on that anyway?
13, where did they put it? Wish they'd put it on a standard spot on the bottle.
There we go.
14 and a half.
So yeah, it's the actual alcohol that's protecting that, and those sweeter flavours of alcohol, I reckon will just allow this to become a bit more juicy and jammy. There was a Pinot that these guys did for 2006 Pinot that we were selling ages ago.
2005.
2005, yeah, and it was just like strawberry jam. That being said, though, I sold heaps of it.
So did I.
Yeah, it's just people are like, wow, that's amazing.
Because that was Pinot Noir that didn't make Masoni, so they put it into El Nino.
You know,
The
that's got enough acidity currently to balance off the fruits. In probably 2 or 3 years, that acidity probably wouldn't be holding.
Well, this will be sold out soon.
Yeah.
So what about if anyone buys 6 bottles of Masoni Shiraz, because that's the winner today, we throw in a bottle of El Nino Shiraz.
Okay, if you'd like to come down and buy 6 bottles of Masoni Estate Shiraz, we'll throw in a bottle of El Nino for you.
Yeah.